The first machine type trap we're going to make is called a figure 4 trap. It's really a classic trap, but for some reason a lot of people have trouble making them. Now what I have here is just sort of a little model of what a figure 4 trap looks like. You can see it looks like the number 4. And basically what we have is a diagonal piece which is going to be holding a deadfall. That's some sort of a weight. Down below is this little thing here. That's called the trigger. And what would happen in action is some animal will touch this trigger. When he does, it'll release this diagonal piece and allow the weight to drop on the animal and kill it. Well, let me show you how to put one of these together. I'm going to use this piece of willow here to make the figure 4 trap. But before we begin, I want to teach you a new word. The word's enough. It's good enough, close enough, fair enough, and so forth. A lot of what we're going to do here is close enough. Okay? Well, we're going to start with this thing by cutting off a couple of pieces. Actually, there's going to be 3 pieces. I'm going to cut this section off right here. Then I'll cut a little piece out of the middle here. And I'll leave that part for last. So we'll start with a little chopping. Now I got to go get my pieces. We're going to start with these 2 pieces here. They're close enough and good enough. First I want to take the thicker of the 2 and take off the end of it. You can see they're roughly the same length. None of this is really important except for a couple of little features. One, when I'm making these things, I usually make sure that the largest piece, the thickest piece here, is going to be the diagonal. I do that for a reason, and you'll understand that reason in just a minute. But the first piece we start out with is going to be the vertical piece. And we're going to make this one here into the vertical piece. And you can see it's fairly straight, except for one little piece on the end, which I'm going to remove. And now it's good enough. What we want to do on this is right at the very end, we're going to just cut into it a little bit like this and make a flat spot on one side, flip it right over, and make another flat spot. About like this. There we go. That's about good enough. I'll drag it down a little bit like so. And you can see it's kind of got a little shovel look to it here. It's kind of pointy. It's flat on the end. And this is going to be the bearing surface. This is where the diagonal piece is going to rest. So this is the first cut you make. Now this is going to be the diagonal. And these 2 pieces are going to come together, something like you see right here. So the next step is going to be to cut a notch in the diagonal. The way I usually do that is I go back a couple of inches from the tip and cut straight in. About like you see here. Just roll your knife a little bit. And then from the long end, cut into that. So we've got a... There we go. Excuse me while I grunt. I'm a big grunter when it comes to this kind of cutting. Grunting puts extra power into your cuts. There we go. Now, got it just about right. It's not a thing of beauty, but beauty isn't what counts here. Function. Now I mentioned to you that I was going to tell you why I make sure that the diagonal is the heavier piece. Well, as you can see, I've already cut into the diagonal quite a ways. I've reduced the amount of strength on that diagonal piece, and that's where the weight is going to be resting. I've already reduced the diameter quite a bit. Now you can see these 2 pieces fit together about like this. The weight is eventually going to be sitting just like so. And you can see the weight will be out here. Here's your vertical piece. And then back down here on the tail of the diagonal, I'm going to have to make my next cut. Now if this is resting in the notch, as it is here, my cut would be this way. It's not good enough because I've got a little funny dog leg there, which I'm going to remove. There we go. Back to work. I'll just flatten that off about like so. Flip it over and do it again. This is what's going to be encountering the actual trigger. Now you can see here's the notch that rests on the vertical piece. Here's the little flat part that's going to be touching in your trigger. This will all make a lot of sense to you in just a few minutes. Now if I could find my part here. Now that you can see how the pieces go together, I've got the vertical piece attached to the diagonal, and it all fits in this little notch down below here. The next thing I need to do is to add my trigger. Now, the trigger is going to go just about like this. In order to make this good enough, the first thing I really want to do is cut the notch at the back end of the diagonal. So you can see the first cut was on the vertical, the second cut was on the top of the diagonal, the third cut will be at the bottom of the diagonal, the fourth cut is going to be at the very end of the trigger. We start that like this. Again, we're going to make a little vertical cut, like so. And then we're going to cut into it, like this. This gives the back end of the diagonal piece a place to kind of catch. This will all fit in just a little bit here. That's pretty good for a starter. And remember, good enough, close enough. Fair enough. There we go. So this is going to fit about like so. Now we've got ourselves the beginnings of the figure 4 trap. The basic unit at this point is done. Now we want to look for proportion and physics and so forth. I like my traps to look about like this. You can see how that is there. Now what I'm going to do is on the vertical piece here, right in here my finger's moving, I'm going to cut a notch on the side that faces me. I'm just going to cut a flat spot. So I'm going to mark that with my finger, like that. There's my thumb, you can see it there. That's where I want this cut to be. So I'm going to make a little notch with the blade to show me where I want the top of it. Flip it over so I don't cut towards myself. And I'm just going to shave away some of the wood. About like this. There we go. Now,